Hey all and welcome back to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. We've come to the far northwest of Hyrule, to Rito Village. A very familiar tune wafts about mine ears. It is of course a remix of Dragon Roost Island, that wonderful place from Wind Waker where we actually were first introduced to the Rito and whatnot, which is pretty cool. So Mexi's back this week, Tanner's out due to IRL shenanigans, so yeah, we're just gonna see how we go from here.
We basically did a galaxy tag. He's out, I'm in.
Yeah, there you go.
And I can't escape, so there we go.
Yeah, Richie is like the one constant. Like, I have to be here. Richie has no such obligations.
It's like one of those boat puzzles. Like you have 4 commentators, so many parts. Richie can't move without Tom, and then I have to be traded out with Tanner occasionally. So you just have to eventually get all 4 commentators to the other side of the commentary. How do?
There you go.
That's like a full-on Layton puzzle if ever I've heard it. I mean, it has been used in Layton.
Just going through the village, seeing what I can buy here. If we want to venture to the north of this place, we will need warmer clothing, but thankfully they sell that here as well.
Yes, although I think you used up quite a lot of your money to go and get bloomin' arrows, so...
My favorite thing about the inclusion of the Ritos in Breath of the Wild is that I don't see it being an intentional middle finger, but it's definitely an unintentional middle finger to some of the Zelda timeline tryhards. Just everyone who tries to be like, no, the Ritos were descended from the Zora, so there's no way they could both exist at the same time. And then, Nintendo comes along and is like, but what if they did? Yeah. And then they just did it. And to me, I like it. It's very much, it's in the spirit of it all. Everything can descend from fish. It's okay. But I do like how for a lot of people that like for how to place into a specific timeline, you do come to the twist that you have both the Zoras and the Ritos coexisting. So, they may be related, but they're not. They can't be seen anymore as, one being more an ancient version of the other. They're just 2 separate races in Hyrule, and that's neat.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm down with that, because...
Use it! Whatever gives you the, most diverse-looking Hyrule, do it. You should never... The fact that some people were using it as a mental lock on no, it has to be this. It was no. Let's have fun with this. Let's have all the tree people live with all the bird people live with all the rock people. Let's do that. It's a nice thing.
Yes, you will definitely want to buy at least some of this clothing if you're going to succeed.
I was just using the introduction to let Mexi fill us in on the history of these guys, but enough about that. I don't even need it right now, that's for later. I'll stick with my upgraded stuff.
But it is nice that the Rito Village does give you a lot of cold protection gear. We were, couple back when we were at the foot of the mountain, this is basically all the best gear to help you out with dealing with the quests on top of that mountain. And then just any other cold areas, really. But, there's a whole snow field in the northeast part of Hyrule. So if you wanted to stop off here. I had the unfortunate... For me, I came from Korok Forest and I went south. So Rito Village was the last part of the cold region that I got to. But luckily it was midway through the game, so I had a million chili peppers. But I had some difficulty with the snow region. Probably a lot more than most people have, just because this village does get you pretty well prepared, at least for the cold and the cold damage.
Might as well bank a few side quests while we're here, because Lord knows we are going to need them later for the monies and such.
Considering how expensive clothing can be in this game, and considering pretty much in every different region. Well,
in this game, Richie, in general,
yes. But also thinking logically in terms of gaming and this particular game, it costs more than some of the more standard items. So you're a bit like, oh, for God's sake, I just want the clothes. But you're probably going to want to get pretty much all of the clothes in each of the different areas for dealing with that area. So you want to get at least some of the snow quill items to deal with everything up in the northwest. There's the heat resistant stuff when you're going for the Gorons. There's a particular clothing item that you cannot progress without in the southwest. And then I don't remember it being specifically needed in the southeast for the Zoras, but it still helps and looks pretty, so hey.
Do you think it was a, measured choice? Like, did they do it on purpose to make Kennelly look... Well, it sort of resemble Kaporia Gaboria.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, giant, big bird with big-ass eyebrows. I mean, to me, I think he's just adorable that they went with an owl Rito. Like, well, the whole parrot Rito, owl Rito, all of the, very unique bird-type Ritos, I think is super cool. I think it's something they may need to lean harder in for with the Zoras. Just because there are some freaky looking fish out there. You can make some. They did it in Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask had different looking Zoras too. It wasn't like an intense amount, but.
Well, it was also in Link Between Worlds, because you had the whole thing of the River Zoras and the Ocean Zoras.
They did bring back the River Zoras, yeah.
So obviously there was that whole thing, which was a cool idea. Whether it was necessarily fully successfully pulled off or not, different kettle of fish. But
I can definitely see that being that's a twist coming back on itself there with the timeline, where I feel like it's maybe Nintendo hearing the theories of like, oh, it's two different Zoras, being like, oh, that's actually clever there, and then that's kind of, I can see them kind of, that's when they incorporated it then into the actual lore of them, because I see that being a little bit different than just like, I mean, this is probably just an animal thing in general, where it's like, oh, how different are these two things? But the whole river and ocean Zora is a little different from like, because I was thinking back to like with the Indigogos, how the piano player, he's not like a blue Zora. He's like a brown Zora, and then the drummer is like a manta ray Zora.
yeah,
So and it's kind of weird that they didn't really lean into that for Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, they kind of went back to just all being the blue and then the occasional like red Zora there. They're probably going to do that in future Zeldas, probably in Breath of the Wild too.
they're kind of at that point where they were doing a lot of really creative stuff with Breath of the Wild in comparison to earlier Zeldas. So they threw in a lot of creativity in a lot of different places. So obviously it's no bad thing to say that they didn't get around to sorting out the Zora. But also now that they've done a lot of that work on all the other stuff, perhaps they're going to have, a bit more brain space to think, oh, now we can, muck about with the Zoras a little bit more.
More brain space. Tom, would you agree? So I would say that this village feels like the smallest out of all of the residential areas in Breath of the Wild. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure.
Like, I know it's not helped by the fact that it's laterally structured, like it's just wrapped around the center rock, which is very cool, but it does kind of make the whole area feel smaller. It does just kind of feel like a tower, but it is kind of funny how it does also really feel like Dragon Roost Island. Like that area was in a big circle around the middle of that mountain as well too, so the Ritos are a really cool addition to Zelda, and so I love that of all of the heavier music songs, because there's not a lot of songs in Breath of the Wild, but I love how one of them is Dragon Roost Island, back again, baby.
I have to say, that's one of the things that I think does get brought up quite a lot in the discourse surrounding Breath of the Wild, is its approach to music. And obviously, it is a very music-light game, because it goes for that more ambient approach.
Yeah.
And so you don't get a lot of those typical, really quite spectacular Zelda songs. Obviously, the main theme of Breath of the Wild is beautiful, and I would say that a lot of the music that is in the game is still really high quality. It's just that because it is so kind of incidental most of the time, you don't get these kind of swelling tracks. And when they do turn up, it's a bit like, oh my god, I love it. And hey, Rivali.
I fucking love him.
He's such an asshole, but it's so fun.
That ain't Falco, but it's fucking close.
You gotta love a cocky, competent, just jerkwad.
Couldn't easily dispense with Ganon. Now then,
It's kind of funny though, he fucking hates Link in Age of Calamity.
He really does.
I feel he really hates him here.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, that's certain, but in Age of Calamity it seems like they dialed it up. Maybe it was just like for drama's sake, who knows?
You saying they Flanderized him?
Oh, I'm not sure if I'd go that far, mate, but...
It's like all he talks about is meat, and I don't understand.
Unless you think you can prove me wrong, maybe we should just settle this one-on-one.
God, he just gives me so many anime character vibes. Like, of all of the characters, I feel like he's the most anime, and that's very odd to say about the bird character.
Well, he's the most flamboyant of the champions, that's for sure.
Yes. He's also easily one of, if not the most talkative.
Yeah.
Because the only other really talkative one is Daruk, and even then, he only speaks really when he wants to. It's Rivali who's just like constantly communicating.
Can you imagine the reason Link doesn't respond to him is because when Link hears Rivali talk, he's just like squawks.
It's like a little parakeet in the cage. Like, sure.
Please do not hesitate.
He just doesn't want to be rude.
But, yeah, sadly, Rivali is no longer around, so it's not like we can go and talk to him, per se. So I guess we'll go and talk to Teba instead.
He, like most sources of good, joy in the world, is gone. So we have to, restore it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one thing that they set up, and it's another thing that I think a lot of people do end up complaining about with Breath of the Wild. It's that whole issue of the story being this taking place after most of the stories happened. Is that you've got these really cool, interesting characters in the champions, and the whole point is that they're already dead. So you kind of just go, and what's the point? You kind of wasted these really quite interesting characters, but there's that whole thing of you've got different approaches to narrative, and it works as an approach to a narrative, and I think it definitely works in the case of Breath of the Wild, but it is a very risky move because it's so easy to have that reaction of, but I want to hear about them.
Well, this is something that Zelda's history has informed us of, is that, as much as everything in this game is Zelda 1, let's also remember that it's informed by Ocarina of Time heavily. And Ocarina of Time, and during that time when it was made, Zelda was really leaning into the sages. The sages were the cool B-cast. We knew our Link, we knew our Zelda, who were going to be our sages and stuff. So Ocarina of Time did a very similar thing where you had the cast of really cool characters. They were given the moment to shine in the child section, but let's all remember that when we encounter all of the sages in the adult sections, we see them for one cutscene, we finish a dungeon, we see them for one more cutscene, and then they're done. So there's already been a history of cool character, gone. So, I mean, in media, I would see it as a risk. I wouldn't really see it as a risk in Zelda, though. Zelda's kind of played this game with its audience before, and it's been successful before. Because on the flip side of it, Wind Waker had its sages, and they were more involved in the story. And, I mean, I love Medley and I love Makar, but I'd say in the grand scheme of most games, they're less effective characters than, say, like even Saria. Saria and Rito. People remember them from Ocarina of Time, and those guys, again, they're cut out halfway through the game, halfway through the story. But Medley and Makar, you see them all the way to the end of the game. You see the Ocarina of Time sages as well in the end. But so I like what the transition here of from sages to the champions. Because the champions are a new concept. Sages kind of make things messy. Sages are the reason we had a 3-way split going on in Ocarina of Time. So I like that spiritually it's the same concept, but I do like the new context of the champions. I do like how now we've freed ourselves to these new concepts, because there's never been anything like the champions before. You've had the Hyrule Knights, but the Hyrule Knights still exist. So this is now another category of characters to have in the game. So I really like where they went with that, with these characters, and I hope they continue with it. Love a good pair of trousers.
There we go. Now we won't die of hypothermia in the cold.
Yeah, because that's always fun when that happens.
Indeed, indeed.
Warmth's important. Not freezing to death, equally as important.
There was a fairy fountain around here, but I can't recall where exactly it is.
Oh.
Oh,
It's
maybe it's the
says
thing
Great
that says Great Fairy Fountain.
Huh!
That is the biggest spot check I've failed in a while, I think.
You rolled for perception, and the dice said 1.
I put it all into charisma, what can I say?
How else are you gonna sashay your way through life?
Indeed, Maxie, indeed. I remember coming here last time and saying there should be a Lionel about, so I wonder if he's actually here.
Well, I bloody hope not.
Maybe I'm just thinking of a different area entirely. Either way, who cares?
I mean, yeah, it's entirely possible. There are that many blooming obstacles and evil enemies that appear at various points, and it's just like, well, if that's not going to kill me, that might.
It's one of the tricks of Breath of the Wild is that there's not just one big lake, there's not just one mountaintop, so you kind of get yourself a little mentally confused on some places, like, wait, was this the top of this mountain, or was it the top of this? And so it just kind of makes the world also feel a lot bigger, just because there are so many different geographical locations that you can easily, and I think might even intentionally be designed to kind of be confusing.
Not to say that if you aren't, smart about things, that you aren't going to be able to tell exactly where you are no matter where you look, because while areas might look similar, they certainly aren't identical. It's just that for probably a lot of people, it's probably just... the differences, the similarities are just similar enough that you can get confused, but the differences are just different enough that technically you could memorize this entire map if you actually wanted to.
Oh yeah. Having all of the locations memorized, that's entirely possible, but I feel, especially, with children, first-time players, not all of us are reading a map all the time. And reading a map is a skill. It's something that, it gets easier the more times you do it. You become familiar. You start to actually remember and memorize places. I like just kind of on that blind playthrough, that first playthrough, and even later ones, because the game is so big that you can do multiple playthroughs and discover new places on those multiple playthroughs, is that before you get to that point where you have the map all memorized, you get those cool adventuring moments where you're not, I wouldn't say you're lost, but you're still like, wait, where was, I'm here. You get those fun moments of being lost, not, full blown lost, where the hell am I on this map?
Yeah, so why I went there to check was, can I upgrade these things? Because they're weaker than the clothes I had on before. But now that I have a top and a bottom, they will protect me from the cold, so I guess that's the main thing.
Yes, because if you don't have protection from the cold, you are going to constantly lose health as you journey further into the northwest to complete the quest. And, free Var Meadow from whatever vile grasp has taken over it. But, it's a bit like, oh, okay, this is going to be fun.
Sure, I love stories.
Is it going to come with a cutscene, or what kind of story are we talking here?
Yeah, it does the whole Link remembering thing, but it's just with her. He stopped at a big tree while he was climbing a mountain. Oh, I remember this one. Yeah. Got a little closer. Yeah, this one's actually kind of tricky to find. Where is the big tree?
Way over there.
I want to say there might be a Lionel up there.
Yikes. What?
That's what you always say, Richie. Everywhere we go, there might be a Lionel. That you can't just keep... Yeah, eventually there's gonna be a Lionel, but not if you predicted one for every place.
I mean, hey, it's Tom who keeps saying that there's a Lionel everywhere. But I just distinctly remember there being a Lionel in an area that was quite high up and hilly by a tree. And it being a slightly terrifying experience, because I think it might have been like my first Lionel approach, and I was just like, I don't know how this works. And like, while I will say decent at video games, like I've played some of the more challenging ones, not Dark Souls level like, but still relatively challenging, I'm not that good. So you throw me up against an enemy like that, and in a combat style that is, I suppose, it's not a hack and slasher style, and I kind of was just like, help, because Lionels are terrifying if you aren't prepared for them.
Oh, no.
Well, they were just able to translate the old 2D game feel of running into a Lionel perfectly. I love it.
Nobody cares that I died. I just fell backwards and died in the snow.
I was fully expecting the moose to kill you, in all honesty.
Yeah, he seemed to be rearing back there, but hey, at least I'm over here now, so...
This is one of the things that I suppose you do realise quite early on in Breath of the Wild, is that certain enemies can quite easily destroy the entirety of your health in one fell swoop. So until you are in a comfortable position, you do spend a lot of time running around enemies and trying to avoid encounters, because you're just like, yeah, if I go and fight them, they're gonna kill me.
I love enemies that serve just that very game function of, I'm gonna put these enemies here that are intentionally too strong, just in case the gamer starts to, start feeling his oats and thinks that he's too good for my game, and they can just wipe him out in one hit. Like those big old bugs in, I think it's Fallout Vegas, where like you think you're all good and all bad, and then they just show up and they just smack you back down, and you're like, oh, I guess I wasn't supposed to go that way. Let me go somewhere else instead. Like, I love that that's kind of a whole game design instance, really.
It's one of those things that I feel like games have gotten a lot more comfortable doing since the likes of Dark Souls, Demon Souls, etc. Because seeing those be as successful as they were kind of shows that people aren't scared of a challenge. Obviously, you'd be daft not to know that was a thing, but we were definitely going through a period where games were just getting easier and easier and easier, and I think there were a lot of people just crying out for challenges. So when they came along, great. And then you start getting experiences like this, where they're throwing in challenges in areas of a game that could be considered relatively easy by the standards of certain other open world titles.
Right. Well, even just like the perception of like the gamer-based difficulty. Like I still just remember that Nintendo like wouldn't release games or would just full-blown change games because of how difficult would this be for. Usually the question was for Western audiences. That's why you have the whole Mario 2 situation. But the fact that to make these big changes just based on is this too hard to play is pretty intense. And I like how it has trends and it has waves. Because like you said, there was that moment where Nintendo kind of was going back on that, like, oh, we need to make our games accessible and easy, but that's where you were getting extended tutorials, extended explanations of how to play the game to make sure that you were comfortable, to make sure that you knew the game, versus games made on the intent of challenge, or games, again, how we've been talking with this, games using their challenge, games using their death mechanics instead. I think it's just more of an exploration. It probably just kind of depends on when people are making games, what are they focusing on? Are you looking for the most people to just play your game? Cool. Then yeah, making your game really easy and really accessible is a solution. It just kind of depends on what kind of game you're trying to make.
Oh, definitely. And I think gaming as a whole has gotten better in terms of that. Well, I say it's gotten better in terms of that discussion about difficulty. In some areas it's gotten a little bit more toxic, but generally it has gotten a lot more balanced in that people are willing to accept that some people want games to be difficult, some people want games to be easy, and there should be options available. But yes, here's Teba.
I call him Teba, personally.
I think Teba fits a bit better.
Actually, it's Titus, not Teba.
Oh, bloody hell. But yeah, he is playable in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. He is one of the best characters in the game, and the best one at destroying the frame rate.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers, but yes, and I mean, it totally makes sense. Also, I'm loving the fact that physics is causing your little mini cake to fly up through the back of your hood, because there is an updraft going on here.
No, Link's just trying to make himself bigger. It's how you intimidate the bird people.
He is a huge bird, to be fair. I would be scared if I was sitting talking to that thing.
Oh yeah, because I mean, it does look like a 6-foot bird, which I mean, it's big birds.
Actually, have we seen any yellow Rito about?
Ooh.
Don't think we technically have yet.
But just imagine, I mean, there's the little pink one, so, we're watching you, Nintendo. The second you put that yellow Rito, you better believe the internet is going to be covered in posts of, look, I found Big Bird in Zelda.
Yeah, we know about this, we know.
Okay, so we were all pretty warm about the Rito's champion. So the game also has this thing where, you have the modern champions, or whatever you want to call them. Again, this is why I like the champion idea versus the sages. The sages are pretty, I don't know, it's pretty strict. Like, sages come with, narrative baggage. Versus these champions, they can be whomsoever you want. So the thing, though, is I'd say this guy's probably my least favorite of the modern crew. At least in this game. To me, I feel like he's he's almost overshadowed.
I think that the problem that Teba comes with is that he's got a relatively bland personality type in comparison to basically all of the other modern champions who have much more going on with both their characters and also their stories and their connections, actually, to the champions of 100 years ago.
Because Teba is not related to Rivali.
Yeah, he's just a really skilled archer. Effectively, like Rivali was at the time. But with all of the others, you've got basically a direct family line, haven't you?
Just about. It could also be that that's the purpose he serves, is that because he's not related directly by family, it shows that this champion spirit isn't a bloodline thing. It's, again, that's why I like this champion idea. It's very flexible. They've shown you can inherit the spirit of a champion. You don't have to be the great-great-grandson of a champion.
Nice. Alright, let's make some stuff before we head up to Var Meadow.
Yes, because I think we will definitely need it, because as you've already witnessed on this journey today, and as, you know, previous recording takes, death comes quite easily if you're not prepared.
Death comes for us all.
It sure does, Vexy, it sure does. Bit of rice in there, bit of acorn, yeah.
Something that I did find quite enjoyable with the cooking mechanic, because there's been so freaking much you can cook, is that you can basically just throw a random assortment of items into the bowl and see what comes out. Obviously, if you're actually planning and wanting to make the most of your ingredients, then maybe be a little bit more thoughtful and careful about what you're doing. But still, it is fun to try.
And the game is nice enough to where, so long as you put food and food together, you're gonna get a useful result. The game's not punishing enough where you get the inedible option. Like, I had to really mess things up. You have to kind of just go off the wall and really say, I want to put monster items with food items to get the inedible options. So you can really just have fun with it and still get useful, at least heart-restoring items. But I do like that it is also very easy to min-max if you're looking for, I want the food that will give me the speed increase the fast for the longest amount of time. That you don't really need to go all over the map. You just need to find the right ingredient and then just maximize it in the dish, and you'll get the best results from it.
Alright, let's go take down a monolith, a titan, as it were.